Welcome back to another episode of TIDAL Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition in conjunction with our broadcast partners at Tri-X 57. We are rolling through the month of February. Finally, we have thawed out. Palma, I do love the winter. I was happy to have a little bit of a break from this stuff. This cold.
Yeah, this was not the winter that I say that I enjoy. You know, it was just a little bit too cold for my liking. I was actually one of the unlucky people that had a pipe burst in my
Ooh,
house.
ooh.
Yep. It was
Your
just
new
in
house.
it was just in the laundry room, so I did get lucky that it was the first floor and didn't really affect too much else of the house. But and we are like under renovations anyway, so it was just like, all right, let's go into that room too, I guess. But yeah, it's been a brutally cold winter in my opinion.
Yeah, it's been persistently cold too. Dan, no pipes bursting at the Skelton household.
Actually, we had pipes burst at a house we take care of, an elderly gentleman, and I was dealing with a flood and burst pipes throughout a recent
Oh my
weekend as
God.
well. So miserable winter on my end too. Love the snow, hate the bitter cold, the extended cold. So I'm happy to be thawing out as well.
I think we lost Joe for a second. Here he is.
I'm back. Did we all cut out?
I think it was just you, but you got back in really
Okay, good. I'm glad the show
faster
went
than
on
I
without
usually
me.
do, and I have a technical difficulty.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe my internet pipe burst, and from all the cold, and then that was it. So anyway, if you think New Jersey's cold, how about New England? Go up a couple degrees latitude, and that's where we find our guest for this week, Matt Noyes from 1 Degree Outside. It's a New England digital media company. Him and his wife, Danielle, have run it for 2 years, and we are going to chat with him all about New England nor'easters, winters, coastal flooding. Matt, how's it going?
It's going great. And I was hearing you guys talking about bursting pipes, and thankfully no bursting pipes here. Although the tile in our floor inside the front door did just buckle over the last 2 days, because up here it's been so cold with so much snow and so much ice that now the carrier beams of the house are starting to change shape, and you're starting to get your posts and beams changing shape. So actually, if you look at the front door in the foyer right now, the tile is just sticking up like a tent in there. So I'm very much looking forward to the thaw. It's been a rough one up here too, but the kids have loved it. They've spent a lot of time playing in the snow this winter up here, that's for sure.
That's good. We get him outside a little bit. I was saying off air, a friend of Dan is a friend of mine, and you've known Dan for a long time. Tell me about you and Dan's history. I don't want you to share any of the bad stuff with us, because of course there is no bad stuff with Dan anyway, right?
There's no bad stuff. I just have to be careful that I don't get us both in trouble. But we've known each other all the way since my freshman year of college. Dan was a couple years ahead of me, so he taught me a lot about meteorology right out of the gate. We were in the agriculture school at Cornell. That's where the meteorology program was. So we spent a lot of late nights and hours studying up at the 11th floor of the building there that meteorology program was in. Had a great view of thunderstorms coming in. So we really cut our teeth in weather together back in those days. And then we both followed a career in television. Dan, of course, is still tremendously successful in TV in Allentown. And as for me, I had a great run for about 24 years total in TV, started upstate New York, then came back home to Boston for a couple decades, and then realized a lot of folks are going digital rather than watching TV. The numbers were showing the shift. And I said, you know what? These are the folks who built my career, made me who I am professionally. I want to continue to serve them. And so that's why we did a digital first kind of proposition here at 1 Degree Outside. And thankfully it's taken off. People were ready for it here in New England.
Now I have to ask, because I think I always ask all meteorologists that come on the show, and when did you decide you wanted to become a meteorologist? Because I think 90% of the people that I've asked that, it's younger than 10. So
right. So true. And the answer to that is I fell in love with weather younger than 10. I fit right into that. I was 6 years old and it was Hurricane Gloria, 1985. All right. However, I had a little bit of the head-heart battle going on. So actually, all the way through the first 3 years of high school, it never occurred to me that something I loved and a passion of mine could actually become my job. I always thought you had to have a job that you didn't necessarily really like, but you paid your bills from, and then a hobby that you enjoyed. And suddenly it hit me, thank goodness, at the end of high school that, wait a minute, I can make my hobby my job. And so that's what I thankfully have been able to do every day since then.
Awesome. And, I also own, as part of my business, a digital media, company as well for the Jersey Shore, so it's good to see this, more people doing this. I mean, let me ask you, when you communicate with your people, what are you doing that's different than what you were doing in television? I mean, yes, we know it's on YouTube, right? It's on your website.
Yeah.
You have a great website, by the way. I love it. I told you off air, I borrowed some of your ideas for my website. But like, what is something different that you're doing that you weren't doing in television?
I could put it in one word: interacting. Okay. Right? I mean, that's the big difference. And you know it too, right? Which is that after decades of broadcasting, after decades of speaking to people, now, thankfully, it's an opportunity to speak with people. So we always joked around in television about the fact that, yeah, you're talking to the camera and the camera doesn't talk back. Well, now in a digital first, venture, now the camera talks back. It has a lot of different voices that are watching from a lot of different spots. So honestly, that's been the most wonderful part about it. That's where I really wished that we could have taken the linear television landscape. I think that there was a lot of opportunity to do that just wasn't necessarily capitalized on. So I'm thrilled to be able to do it myself and do it with my wife, Danielle, by the way, who is my co-founder at 1 Degree Outside, also a meteorologist. She's got her master's in meteorology from Florida State University. She was on Boston TV. In fact, we competed against each other. First, we worked together at NBC and the cable news station, New England Cable News in New England. And then she went to CBS. And so we were both morning meteorologists competing against each other until we got married and had kids, and the rest is history.
Interesting. Well, my wife too is actually also a meteorologist, but we don't compete against each other. Yeah, we're not competition.
Gosh, that's great.
We are. Yeah. We met at Rutgers at the end of our time at Rutgers. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's what a great program. You must have a lot of great memories from Rutgers, I would imagine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Rutgers really helped me shape who I was. Like truly, I'm not just blowing smoke. But anyway, so let's get into the what people come here to talk about. New England, coastal flooding, coastal storms here. We're going to talk about this for the next half hour. We have about 90 seconds before we get the break. So just tell me, like what is that quintessential New England coastal storm like being in the mix of that?
You know what? It's a constant rage. If you go to the ocean, it is nature in a constant rage. If you're away from the ocean, then it's more just turmoil. But that is the best way I could sum that up, right? You go to, and you guys see it. Of course, you dealt with Sandy. You've seen some big storms in your time as well. I think for us, the big addition to that is oftentimes we're cold enough that it's a pasting, sand blasting snow in your face as well. So that would probably be your 90-second roundup on that.
All right, great. Well, we're going to take our first break here. We'll come back on the other side. We'll get into some specifics here with Matt here on TIDAL Flooding Talk. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly TIDAL Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. You are watching TIDAL Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, and we would like to remind our viewers that floods happen all over. Think you're not at risk? Floods happen in every U.S. state and not just in high-risk zones. Even a few inches of water can cause thousands of dollars in damage. Check your flood risk at FEMA.gov and stay informed.
All right, and we are back with Dan Skeldon's longtime friend, Matt Noyes from 1 Degree Outside. Dan, I'll let you go with the question. I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
Oh, it's all right. I'm just thrilled you're joining us, Matt. And reminiscing about forecasting New England weather, what's the biggest driver? Like, what type of weather sparks the biggest interest amongst your viewers? Down the Jersey Shore, we have the year-round threats like you guys, the nor'easters and the off-season hurricanes and tropical systems in the summer. What's the biggest driver for your audience? What kind of garners the most views and the most excitement on your team?
Number one is snow. Number two is tornadoes. And that is because snow we get a lot of, and it's ingrained into our being here in New England. It's the fabric that all of us are made of. So when snow comes calling, it becomes the number one bill. But having said that, tornadoes are a very different reason because we don't historically get a lot of them up here. So on times when we do have a tornado warning, any type of rotation inside of a storm, that garners a lot of attention too, because it's something that we're just not kind of used to dealing with. So those are our two biggest ones. Of course, that's only largely because, Dan, as you know, we've gone so long without a landfalling hurricane in New England that it almost has been wiped from recent memory of most of the folks who live here, which is a very dangerous reality, but a reality nonetheless, and means that therefore we don't have the same hyper-vigilant tropical attention every time there's a new update in the tropics that some places have. Not now. Nature will eventually change that, as you guys know.
And we talk about that all the time, with Sandy. One of the good things, there's not a lot of good that came out of Sandy, but it gave everybody a refresher. It proved that the Jersey Shore wasn't immune, and it gave us a measuring stick to kind of compare recent storms to. New England, the last one was what? The last significant one was
It was the Blob of 91 was the last, yeah. And then before that, Gloria of 85. But neither of those, of course, as you guys know, were major hurricanes. So New England hasn't seen a major landfalling hurricane since 1954, which means there's not too many people. There's people who are alive for it. There's not too many people who remember a landfalling major hurricane in New England, let alone the amount of building that we've had along the coast and the amount of population surge that we've had to the coast since then. So there's not a lot of folks who realize the catastrophe. And part of what we do is we actually do training seminars for corporations and companies that are very ingrained in weather here in New England and depend on it a lot. And we really open some eyes. And all we have to do is share with them some of the statistics from, let's say, the Great Hurricane of 1938, or as some call it down your way, the Long Island Express. We can't bear to call it that, but nonetheless, the Great New England Hurricane of 1938 usually serves as our benchmark for hurricanes. And it's funny, for blizzards, it's always the blizzard of 1978, but we have bested that on snowfall, and we have bested that on coastal flooding as well. Just a lot of folks, I think, in nostalgia have that still in their minds.
Yeah, I think oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead, Palma, go.
Well, I was just going to say, that's part of what we try to do with the coalition is keep it at the forefront of everyone's mind that flooding can happen. We could have another hurricane next year. Don't just forget about, for us, it was Sandy in my mind. And also we have a lot of new people that live here now. So keeping those people informed too is just as important, but it is easy to let yourself put it out of your mind and just hope that you're never going to see that again. So I was just agreeing with you on that.
Yeah, and you're so right. And Palma, I think the other thing on the other side of the spectrum that you just kind of made me think of is the fact that, with the fact that we've seen a rising sea level, we now are seeing more frequent of these sunny day, high tide flooding events. We're seeing more of these, king tide, as it's become called, thanks to the folks in California. We used to call it a perigean spring tide back in old New England weather times, gosh darn it. But nonetheless, the king tides, we're seeing more and more coastal impact than we've ever seen before at times that folks wouldn't expect it. So we know that's just raising the baseline for the coastal flooding that happens in the storms where we do expect it.
Matt, just tell us about the geography of the New England coastline and how nor'easters impact the tidal flooding there. Are there places that are more prone to it than others because of the geography of the coastline?
Absolutely. And of course, remember, New England stretches all the way from basically Stamford, Connecticut, right, all the way up through Eastport, Maine. And so, and that's not to exclude the little extremities because you count too. But nonetheless, so this means that you have a couple of different areas of coastal flooding. When you've got an east-northeast or an easterly wind, you're piling the water up to the western end of Long Island Sound, and you're very vulnerable from New Haven, Connecticut, all the way down to New York. And then when you get more classic nor'easter that moves south and east of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, well, now you're battering a northeast wind into our entire eastern coastline. And that really goes from southern Maine through the seacoast of New Hampshire, down through eastern Massachusetts, including Cape Cod. And that might be the biggest kind of geographic note, is that the Cape, of course, is a thin strip of land shaped like a flexing arm that sticks out into the ocean and becomes even more vulnerable to these storms as they come by, both with regard to wind and coastal flooding and beach erosion, which has become a big thing for us over the last 10 to 15 years. You know, a lot of folks talk about the rising sea level producing coastal flood issues, but for us here in New England, it also really has produced some significant beach erosion issues as well. So that's been a big part of it. Part of what we do at 1 Degree Outside, yes, we are a digital media company, but we actually do private forecasting as well. So we actually have developed a coastal flood, beach erosion, and overwash forecast for places that never had it before. So we all know that there are coastal flood tide gauges up and down the seaboard, and that's down where you guys are. That's up here in New England. But they're only at certain places and points. And if you live in between those points, you have to kind of infer what might be happening based upon those forecasts. So what we said is, let's fill in those points. So we actually created tidal height forecasts, including storm surge and everything else, in hourly detail for these spots in between. That's been a big part of our partnership with emergency management and first responders up here as well.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Now,
Do you find, Matt, that we find in New Jersey, locals a little more in the know as far as tidal flooding, what your flood level is, with difference between minor, moderate, major tidal flooding. How knowledgeable are New Englanders, locals and vacationers, when it comes to tidal flooding and kind of knowing what to expect?
You ask a great question, Dan, because look, the local population is very knowledgeable on what's going to be happening with regard to coastal flooding in any given location, with maybe the exception of the fact that we've become all of us across the country have become a more mobile population since COVID. So we do find that there are some folks that are moving to the coastline that don't really know the history of it, but usually our longtime locals do a pretty good job of spreading the word and letting them know what's up when it comes to that. I think that as far as what we look at with tourists and with folks visiting, look, Cape Cod, again, the Cape and the islands is a big tourism spot. And so this is one of the things that we do think about from an emergency planning standpoint up here, is that someday when, not if, but when the next hurricane comes calling to New England, if it should happen anywhere in season between Memorial Day and Labor Day, there would be tens of thousands of folks that would need to evacuate off of Cape Cod. And those bridges need to shut down when the wind gusts get beyond a certain level of about 60 miles per hour frequently. So that is a real part of the emergency management plan up here, is understanding the busiest times and understanding how much in advance evacuations would have to begin. It's not like you see out of New Orleans. It's not like you see out of South Florida in some of these major urban areas, but nonetheless, it's still a deal because the bridges off the Cape are pretty small for volume wise.
Got it. All right, we're going to take our second break here. We'll be back on the other side. More from Matt on Tidal Flooding Talk.
Welcome to your Jersey Shore 24/7 live streaming weather channel. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. Our team at Cup of Joe Weather and Drone is covering the shore like nowhere else. And this live streaming weather channel is one more reason why. In the main player, get all of our weather and drone videos. On the left-hand side, see current radar, see our webcams across the Jersey Shore, and even giving you the ability to submit your photos to live on the live streaming channel. On the bottom, we have our tickers for weather and future weather conditions on both land and sea. And of course, all the ways to follow Cup of Joe Weather and Drone.
Welcome back to this week's Tidal Flooding Talk, where our co-host Palma has the pleasure, I'll put that word in quotes, of being with three meteorologists this week. Joe Martucci,
Sorry,
myself, and our
Palma.
guest, meteorologist Matt Noyes from 1 Degree Outside. Matt, it's so great to have you here again.
Thank you.
Wanted to ask you how popular, getting back to that, the new products you built. Yeah, that's something you're doing that's different than when you were on TV as well. You're building useful products for your viewers to see. And I know you built some rip current stuff for the summer and that tidal flooding and overwash stuff. How has that been received? Are you getting any feedback from your app users as to the usefulness of this?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So right now, what we've done is we've partnered with, in the case of Hampton Beach rip currents, we partnered with New Hampshire State Parks and the New Hampshire State Beach Patrol. And that was something separate from the coastal flooding. The coastal flooding is our partnership with Duxbury Fire Department and a series of emergency management agencies across the South Shore of Massachusetts. The idea from both of those, though, is that this data goes to the emergency planners and or the Beach Patrol themselves. So we actually don't incorporate that into our app, and we do that pretty intentionally. The reason that we do that is because, look, we still have the ability, like when we were on television, to be the mouthpieces of the information, right? So we can vet the information, we can look at it. It is new, it's experimental still because it's only been in existence for a couple of years. It performs well, but at the same time, we're really careful about that because we don't want to give any sort of bad information that might sway people to not go to the beach if it's going to be a great day, or vice versa. So that's the answer to the question there. This is really a behind the scenes tool that we use all the time with our emergency management planners and first responders.
Now, since you have experience both as a TV meteorologist and now you're on this digital platform, what have you found to be the greatest challenges of this digital world of forecasting?
That's a really great question, Palma. And the answer to that is cutting through the noise, right? And so what I mean by that is the fact that, online, it's a beautiful thing, and it also is a danger. Everybody has a voice, right? And it's beautiful in one regard because everybody deserves a voice. But the other part of that is that means that there are times that folks with very, very large and significant followings aren't actually necessarily interpreting data in the way that it needs to be or should be interpreted. So that is the danger, is that there's mixed messaging that goes on. I'll say that I believe that danger, though, is greatly outweighed by the potential reach. The number of folks that we can reach digitally now is far beyond the number of folks than we could reach linearly and through kind of old school television. And so that is, essentially the saving grace. You realize that if you have a good message and your message is cohesive, coherent, and accurate, at least you have that kind of unfettered base potential there.
Got it. And, just kind of that balance between being a public face, right, doing the media, and then also the consulting. I feel very similar to you with these parallels here. Have there been any challenges trying to balance the both, between the two of them?
Oh, Joe. Yes.
I don't need you to tell us all your woes. I'm just kind of,
No.
How do you balance that?
Yes, no, it's so look, our company is my wife Danielle and myself, and we have a data scientist who we contract out to as well from time to time. But largely it's the two of us with all the forecasting, with all the videos, with the private client forecasting that we do for municipalities, right? And we have 3 kids. And so, you put all that together and it's tremendously spread thin. However, having said that, a lot of folks say, so how are you going to scale and how are you going to grow? And my answer is really simple. We do a great job. We make sure that it is the best quality forecast that these organizations can get. And then we hire more meteorologists because isn't this the dream of every meteorologist, is to be operationally and actively forecasting and making a difference for the public. So I'm really excited about the growth. I certainly am having flashbacks to when I was in my early 20s, starting out in TV, working very hard for very little, and at the same time, doing it all on a wing, a prayer, a passion, and a dream. And those days have come back, and it's very organic, and it's resulted in some really beautiful things.
Awesome. Well, we wish you the best of luck, and we keep on grinding, and you put hard work into it, and you talk to the right people, and good things happen, right? Sometimes
That's
it's
right.
like a forest through the trees, or was it forest through the trees, trees through the forest? I feel you there. Well, we're gonna almost wrap up this week's episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, but we are gonna end the week like we do every week by talking about the one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise. Dan, the floor is yours.
Well, it's my first opportunity to commiserate about my New England Patriots performance in the Super Bowl with my fellow Patriots fan. I mean, very seldom do I have my best friend and a Patriots fan together on Tidal Flooding Talk. So
that's true.
That's the thing I can't stop talking about. At least until February is over and baseball season begins.
Okay, I'm curious, where does this Patriots loss rank in the worst New England championship game losses?
I think it's way down. I did not expect this to do that well. I mean, the Buckner 86 World Series is bad. The Giants Super Bowl, the helmet catch, those are horrible. This one, it hurts, but it's way down that list.
Okay, Matt, I'll toss to you. Maybe I'll just have you, if you want to just talk about your Pats there. Where are we at? I was rooting for the Patriots, for the record.
I love that. That's great. And it's so funny because when you said the topic, when you said what we were going to talk about, first thing that popped in my mind is, I guess we're talking about the Patriots. So Dan, we're on the same page there. Look, I loved it. I loved the game. I loved every second of it. It was a terribly played game in some regards by the Patriots. Drake is fantastic, but could not get the ball where it had to go. But having said that, again, being a big picture, back to the organic roots of hard work and making things happen kind of guy, right? This is a team that went from 3-14 to 14-3 and went to the Super Bowl. We would never have imagined that last year. Imagine what's in the future. There is so much great ahead. I found the game to be tremendously uplifting that we were there.
I agree.
That's always the glass is half full type of guy. So thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, it balances out. Palma, do you want to keep it in the sports realm, or are we going to bounce outside?
Just for a second, I
am
a hockey fan, so I don't really watch football that often, but I personally thought the Super Bowl was kind of boring this year. No offense. I mean, it was like,
yeah,
there wasn't like a touchdown for like a long time, but whatever. So I would like to say, since my kitchen is kind of torn apart, I had to move my coffee machine, my Nespresso machine, up to my room. And I don't know how I'll ever go back. I mean, it's very convenient to just wake up and have your coffee. So
yeah.
I don't know. I would try it. That's all.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, you guys are giving me a lot of ideas, because we have an espresso machine. We just got one for the holidays, and it rocks. Like, I can't live without it now. It's the
best.
Again, and getting the new pods in the mail, it's like, yeah. So anyway, but I'm not going to do that one. I did want to talk about the Super Bowl here, because it was our first time to talk about this. The more I've watched it, not the Super Bowl, but Charlie Puth's national anthem in the beginning, the Jersey Shore's own Charlie Puth from Rumson, the more I'm like, this was like one of the best, I thought, national anthem performances. I mean, the only one I could think of is like Whitney Houston, and then like he's like right underneath that. So I thought
it had like a Christmas vibe, didn't it?
It did.
Like Christmas
totally. Yeah. And he I thought like he absolutely crushed it. I thought it was like, it kind of kept the spirit of the national anthem. Like, sometimes people go a little too like off the rails with it, but I thought that was there. And then like the camera angles, shout out to the camera angle dude who got the fighter jet at the end, as he was doing it. But yeah, Charlie Puth, Jersey Shore's own. I thought he crushed it, and I just want to say it here on Tidal Flooding Talk for everybody. So
I hear he watches every single time, so I think he's going to be very happy you gave him the shout out.
Oh, does he? Good. I'm glad he does.
Yeah, he's a big fan. Absolutely.
Right. Shout out Charlie Puth. Shout out Rumson, New Jersey. So all right. Well, hey Matt, really appreciate you being on here with us. Tell us where we can find more about your business and where people can check out what you're doing.
You're so kind. Thank you very much. OneDegreeOutside.com is the website, and the app is in the App Store. It's free. It's 5 stars, and it works everywhere in the country and the world. Just search the number 1 Degree Outside Weather on the App Store and Google Play.
Wow. Awesome. Love that. All right, great. Well, Matt, thanks again for chatting with us. We're going to be back with you guys next Tuesday with Tidal Flooding Talk. As we always do, we have episodes lined up into the spring. For Dan, Palma, I'm Joe Martucci. We'll talk with you soon.